Hey there, art nerds. Today I am easily influenced by Jeannie Dickson, the popular Instagram artist, creator of Hello Watercolor, and recent collaborator with Maimeri Blue. So before we dive too deep in today's review, I do want to do a little bit of a disclaimer. I don't know Jeannie Dickson. We have never, to my knowledge, met. I mean, she does live somewhere in Texas and I live in Louisiana, so we might have met somewhere, but like, not that I was aware of, not that I can remember. We don't have a personal relationship. We do not correspond. I purchased this book and this palette with money from my Patreon. All opinions are my own and based on my years of experience as a watercolor comic artist, a watercolor illustrator, and an art supply reviewer, both here on YouTube and then over on my blog before YouTube even started, for me at least. YouTube's been around for a while. So this is just a product review, and reviews are for consumers, people who might be interested in these paints, people who might be interested in this book. I don't expect any sort of correspondence with Jeannie. I'm not looking for any kind of correspondence with Jeannie. And as we progress through this Easily Influenced series, I'm kind of learning to shift and adapt my style just a little bit from the way I normally do when I review student grade and professional grade watercolors, where I will make cracks at the company. Not going to do that. Another thing, everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion as the reviewer who is reviewing these products here today on this channel. You're entitled to your opinion as someone who might be a fan of Jeannie Dickson's work, a fan of Maimeri Blue, or some combination of the two. If I do or do not love her stuff and you do or do not, you know, at counterpoints. Okay, if I do love her stuff and you do not, that's valid. If I don't like her stuff and you do, that's valid. All roads lead to Rome. All art supplies and art books lead to art. It's all good here, okay? You are entitled to share your opinion down in the comments, but let's be civil. Let's be respectful to each other. The only kind of comments that I delete are outright hateful, transphobic, homophobic, and racist comments. So if you can be cool, I can be cool. We all can be cool here. If you want to talk about it in even more depth, you're also welcome to join me on my Discord server, the Paint Box. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys. I also have some show notes for this, but I do not have typed up show notes for Hello Watercolor. If that's something that you would be interested in seeing, I can type them up for you, but YouTube does provide transcripts of what is said here. So you turn on the captions. I encourage you to do so if that's something that you benefit from. I watch my stuff with captions, or you can check out the transcript. You're welcome to do that as well. So let us be easily influenced by Jeannie Dickson's beautiful watercolor illustrations in today's Easily Influenced. Hey art nerds, today I want to talk to you guys about Jeannie Dickson's Hello Watercolor. So this is part of the Easily Influenced series. So today we're not only looking at her book, but we're also looking at the collaboration that she did with Maimeri Blue. This should actually be the third installment in this little mini series on Maimeri Blue, because we talked about the products alone themselves. Then we talked about Jenna Rainey's book and her collaboration with Maimeri Blue, and now we are talking about Jeannie Dickson. Now, before I dive into my thoughts on this book, and I got notes, I do want to point out that reviews are for readers and product reviews are for the people who might be interested in purchasing the product. I don't know any of these creators personally, although I am a fan of their work online. We don't have any sort of personal rapport. We've never met, and I don't have any personal opinions about them. So all opinions are going to be about the book and the information presented in the book, information commonly available online like YouTube channel, Instagram, that sort of thing, as well as my experiences with the paint. And that is the whole point of this entire Easily Influenced series, is It is nothing personal. It is about personas and it is about paint. I actually thought Hello Watercolor was an older book than it is. It came out in 2020 and I was kind of surprised because I thought I'd seen this book since like 2016, but I was wrong about that. And also have some tabs on ideas and projects that I like and would like to revisit, either because they are demonstrating techniques that I'd like to learn or because there's some interesting ideas there. I consider myself an intermediate painter. I paint watercolor comics and I have been painting for over 10 years now. Most of what I paint are people, animals, and environments as a watercolor comic artist. And I would really like to loosen up my watercolor style, and I would really like to just learn some new techniques and learn some new tricks because I feel like my work has kind of stagnated. And I'd like to loosen it up a little bit. And that is also part of purchasing these books because all of the books that I am reviewing in this series have been purchased by me. And going through them is with the hopes that I'm going to learn something new or that I'm going to find some exercises or drills that might help loosen up my art style. So Hello Watercolor is the second of the books we've taken a look at that is not spiral bound. The first is No Fail Watercolor by Macchiino. That review is actually coming out in a big multi-book review because for the books that are by art influencers / influential artists who don't have paint products on the market, I'm going to do those all in a together review rather than, you know, the book and then the product. It's hard to believe that this came out in 2020. I thought it was older, not because it looks older, not because it looks dated, but just because I feel like I've seen this book around for a while. All of the watercolor books I've read for the Easily Influenced series start out really wordy, like they have to convince us. I'll show you guys. To me, as a watercolor artist, really wordy. It just feels like wasted space and wasted time. I don't really need you to convince me to like watercolor. I already bought the book. I want them to wow me with the art and the techniques we're going to learn. So give me a taste of what we're going to be learning with some of the art that you generate for the book. And this book is better than some of the other books I've reviewed about including the art projects as part of the actual book art. I found Jenna Rainey's Everyday Watercolor really included a lot of art that wasn't even shown, like wasn't even as projects in the book. Hello Watercolor does a much better job of making sure that it is mostly projects that are in the book, so if you see something you like, you can replicate it. Her materials section does a good job of covering the basics without really going into brands. I get being brand agnostic, but beginners often benefit from specifics. And she has, this whole video is kind of about this book and her collaboration with Maimeri Blue. I don't, other than they asked her to do it, I don't really like know why she specifically went with Maimeri Blue because it's not like she's talking about them. But I did like her materials section. The paper section didn't really include enough examples, to be honest. But as we go into brushes and as we go into paints, there's more photo examples. Now, to nitpick, she does actually show some paints. I can tell you guys what these brands are. Obviously, we have Winsor Newton, and then we have the Daniel Smith half pan set. It's like the ultimate half pan set. And then this looks like Ecoline dye-based watercolors down in the bottom, just in case you guys are curious. And then she also has some gouache up here on black paper. Brush anatomy is helpful and provides a beginner standardized vocabulary that is often used by other tutorials and art educators. I actually think when you're learning, whether you are learning from the internet or taking classes, having access to this standardized art vocabulary is really helpful because it allows you to understand what other people are saying to you as you continue your education, but it also allows you to teach beginners using the same vernacular that other educators are using. And it's something that I don't see consistently enough done. So I appreciate that she has like an explanation of the different parts of the brushes because this is something that I mention all the time in my own videos and people are often confused what I mean when I say ferrule. So it's nice to see books kind of reinforcing that education. I like a how-to book that sets readers up for future success in classes as well as online. Photos in the materials section provide context as well as visual interest. So not only do they give the readers additional visual information about what she's talking about, but they just also keep you interested on the page itself. And that's something that I found some of the other how-to watercolor books that I've read while working on the Easily Influenced series have really struggled with, is they just don't have enough diagrams, illustrations, and photos. They have a lot of text and not a lot of visuals. And for an art book, you need those visuals. I appreciate her pigment code breakdown on page 18. It's nice to have another book that I can reference and refer to as a good primer, especially because I teach watercolor out in the wild, and it's just nice to be able to point people to good books or recommend books for libraries to acquire. She actually talks about having her workspace on page 23. I found that, okay, maybe this is because I am super nerdy. So here's a picture that she provided of her workspace. Very glamour shot eyes. It is a beautiful workspace. Most of us don't work in such beautiful workspaces. And I think it is the best, it's the first actual photo of somebody's workspace that I have seen in these books so far. Honestly, I'd love it if every book had workspace photos, and I mean multiple workspace photos, not just little up close workspace photos, but pulled back so you can really see how they're setting up their space. Mine is super ugly and cluttered, and it is bright as the sun. It is not an aesthetic workspace at all. I didn't feel like there was really enough information about how to optimally arrange things, so I'm going to give my 2 cents. Also, if you guys see me swatting, I'm sitting in my backyard, and the mosquitoes are out. It's a little early for the mosquitoes to be out, but we had a drought all summer, so the mosquitoes were dead, and then we had some rain, and now they're back in full force, making up for lost time. So here is a sketch of my workspace. If you watch my tutorials, that's what you guys see. That's typically how I work. You don't want wet paint crossing over your painting, so set it up to suit your dominant hand. So my paints, my water, my ceramic palettes are all to the right of me, so I'm not crossing over where I'm painting. Prop your painting up a little. Don't paint flat. Accurate makes these little pucks that you can put under. I find those are actually kind of big at the size that I paint. You could just slip a couple of rolls of tape under something like that just to prop it up just a little bit. Paper towels under brushes are helpful to dab off as well as to catch excess water so it's not sitting on your workspace. I am using a glass-topped drafting table that I received as a graduation present years ago. The white surface you guys see on it is actually a Teflon coating that is somewhat heat resistant. So I'm not just working on the flat glass itself. It provides a little bit of friction. It's just a better work experience than working directly on a glass top table, and it's very easy to clean off. It gets dirty pretty frequently, which is why you guys see it looking awful, but you can wipe up alcohol marker from it, you can wipe up watercolor from it. It's just a good little workspace to work on. Also, they're fairly inexpensive to replace. If you're left-handed, you would want to work, I think, to a mirror image of that. But if you're left-handed and you have a different idea for how you set up your workspace, let us know down in the comments below. I recommend using 2 cups of water, one clean and one dirty, but I only use one because I have very limited space on my tabletop for the illustration, all the stuff, and to record. Her color theory section is more robust than everyday watercolor. It includes photo, reference, and information. I like that. I like her split primary color wheel. She did a good job with her color theory section, which makes sense. She is a designer. And I am going to mention this twice because it is a pet peeve of mine, basically. So this is her color theory section. Very pretty and very aesthetic with lots of helpful information. She's a designer. She went to school for design. In the back of the book, she claims to be a self-taught watercolor artist. When you go to school for any type of art, visual art, a lot of that carries over. Color theory is universal regardless of the media you're working with. Also, the basics of composition and basic drawing skills, it doesn't matter what media you're working in, those are going to translate. So I personally feel it is disingenuous to refer to yourself as a self-taught artist when you have that background where so much does translate over. But also, we live in the age of the internet. And she also mentions, there's a section later in the book about Instagram and how she got her start on Instagram. I don't think it makes her a bad person, but I see, as I'm doing this series, I'm seeing the term self-taught artist come up a lot when they're not self-taught. They have some formal training, and then they have School of Internet to benefit from. The section on hue, value, and saturation with pictures is helpful. This is something that I have difficulty remembering, so I really appreciate the refresher. And again, I appreciate using shared vernacular. I appreciate her tip on checking value by taking a black and white photo. If you record like I do, I ran across a tip on checking your value using red glasses, because they actually also desaturate and you can check your values that way as well. I don't remember where I saw it, but I know it was like on TikTok. I don't remember who did it, but thank you. It was helpful. I appreciate it. I know all these how-to books require refreshing memory and research. Like if you're writing them, like if you're making your own how-to book, you need to refresh your memory and you need to do research, because my presentations and classes require refreshing and double checking all my information. I wish these books would credit their sources, and I haven't seen any of them do that yet, and that is really disappointing and frustrating, especially for people who want to learn more. Crediting your sources not only makes you look better educated and like you do your research and like you're certain about your information and you're pulling on this history of information, but it also gives your readers, your fans, and your audience additional information and resources to continue their education. So when you cite where you learn from, you are not only looking like a better artist, you look like you care about the community that you benefit from and are a part of, but you look like you care about your audience because you want to give them further information. I wish she would have done that at the end of her book, and I feel this way for all of the books that I've read so far. I try to do this in my video descriptions, and I did it from when I was doing blog posts. So this is something, as somebody with a formal art education and a master's degree in art, they are very adamant that you do this when you're writing information and you're teaching classes. So that's part of the reason I do feel very strongly about citing and sourcing your information, not only so that other people can double check and make sure that everything you're saying is accurate, but also so they can learn more and they can further their own education. I want to normalize doing research for artists. This is commonly taught and required in art schools, and it's something that we as online art educators should be championing and teaching and demonstrating ourselves, so that those who watch our content get a better art education, right? We should emulate that behavior that we were taught. She has a section on paint consistencies on page 32. And I think this is super helpful. My adult students tend to struggle with this a lot, knowing how thick to mix the paint. They all want to handle it like it's acrylic. And when I teach, I give familiar comparisons like Kool-Aid, milk, and cream. So she instead has consistency levels, level 1 through 5, with 1 being the lightest and 5 being the darkest. So kudos to Jeannie for actually talking about warm and cool colors, both in terms of hue and emotional impact. This is something that I would expect of a designer. This is their bread and butter. This is how they make their money, is using colors and art and composition and shapes to affect how the viewer feels about certain things. So I really appreciate that. I like the water control diagram that she has on page 38. That would be this here. Now, I don't think she mentions this, but this would be on a cotton rag paper. Cellulose paper handles a little bit differently. It would have been cool if she'd had examples of both. I think that she prefers cotton rag paper, although she did say that student grade has its purposes. So having both would have been really helpful, or at least saying what paper that was on, because I don't think she did, but I'm going to double check, would be very helpful as well. No, she does not say what paper that is. The fact that she gives tips for water control is also very helpful. It's something that a lot of my students need help with, and a lot of these books don't talk about. She also has instruction for creating a thirsty brush. I talk about this all the time. I'm glad she covers it. It's a very helpful technique. She has a section on page 40 on how to do brushwork. So here is just some simple brushwork exercises. Hello Watercolor might be the text I recommend to students and viewers. It is the best text for beginners that I have found yet, and it's very helpful for intermediate painters looking to further feather their nest and learn new techniques, learn new drills, that sort of thing, especially if you learned via the internet rather than being able to take in-person classes. But even if you did take in-person classes, if your classes are larger classes, you may not get the one-on-one instruction that you need. And a book like this is going to demonstrate some of those things that might get missed even in a traditional class. And I plan on revisiting her brushwork exercises. Her techniques section is far more robust than everyday watercolor, and it has a lot of photos. Good job, Jeannie. I really like Hello Watercolor. So on page 51, she talks about masking fluid, and I felt like she really kind of glossed over it. So I want to share my tips for masking fluid, because that's something else I'm using the books for, is just as like reminders of additional information that I know that weren't covered in the book that you might know, that you might find helpful. And if you guys are interested, at the end of this series, I'll compile all these tips and do a video where I just demonstrate them all. So let me know down in the comments. So for applying masking fluid, use a synthetic brush. Wet your brush and work in brush soap into it before you start using your masking fluid, and don't rinse that out. Leave that in. It's going to prevent the masking fluid from getting sucked up into the ferrule. Apply your masking fluid. I portion mine out into a small glass jar from Dollar Tree so I don't spill, and so that the latex won't spoil fast, because natural latex does rot over time. Rinse your brush off immediately after application and pull the masking fluid out of the hairs. She includes an explanation on dry brush on page 54. Good on you, Jeannie. I have seen a bunch of the other books showing illustrations that have dry brush aspects, but they don't even mention what that is nor how to do it. So good for her for explaining that. I kind of feel like, given that this book was put out in 2020, I kind of feel like maybe she read some of those other books, saw what they were missing, saw what they were lacking, and addressed that in her own book, which is what I'm doing here. So I think that's a very smart idea. She also has a section on her bread and butter brush lettering, which is on page 57, which I was really impressed by, because I'll be overly blunt with you guys. A lot of these how-to books, they don't talk about the thing that actually makes them the money, the thing that they're actually famous for. So it was nice to see her actually explain some of that in her own book. She also covers the materials that she specifically uses for brush lettering, which I appreciate. And I'm definitely going to revisit the brush lettering section, and she includes a practice alphabet as well as drills. I was so impressed by that. That is so helpful. Her projects feature a hero image, a description, a color palette, tips, brushes, and other supplies, and the techniques used. So let me find an example project. Okay, this is a really pretty example that you see in a lot of the photos of her workspace, right? So very appealing if you're just flipping through the book. This way you can pick out projects based on what you have, what you know, or the vibe you feel like painting. The projects also have a decent range of just techniques, abilities, kind of like art for joy's sake. These projects are mostly less draftsmanship heavy than Jenna Rainey's book, but feel more appealing to me, especially the unicorn, the hydrangea, and the pomegranate projects. The pattern play state is cute, and it reminds me of my Paint Your State art kits. So I might be biased, great minds think alike. On page 117, I made a note to myself, why do I never think to use a straw to blow splatters? I need to try this myself. So I'm already seeing techniques that I'm aware of, but never think to do, or don't really know how they're gonna accomplish what I want them to accomplish, being used in her book. I appreciate that. As an intermediate painter, I am always looking for new ways to approach watercolor. And often with these how-to books, I'm very disappointed when they tend to just cover the same information that every other how-to watercolor book covers. Her tips are frequent and good, like great reminders for intermediate painters. So many, okay, so on page 120, she has a painting loose style florals. It's just one project. I was really hoping it was going to be a chunk of the book, kind of like the calligraphy section was. I'd already made a note though that I want to go back and revisit that project. And I've noticed that so many calligraphers do the loose florals. It makes sense because they already know how to do the strokes and trust their brushes. And she mentions referencing and studies on page 123, which I wish she'd mentioned it sooner, but so good. More of these influential artists and art influencers need to be very honest about this kind of stuff, including referencing, because referencing, whether it's looking at the world around you, setting up a still life, taking your own photos, or finding reference images online. That's a big part of being an illustrator and an artist. We don't just carry this massive photographic dictionary in our head. Some people do, but many artists actually have, what is it, aphantasia, where you have difficulty visualizing things, especially ADHD artists. So a lot of us are frequently referencing things and kind of practicing drawing what we're seeing and translating it. And I really want to normalize that as just a part of art practice, because it is frequently very much skipped over in these kind of beginner level books and texts. And I think it's great that she does actually mention it. I wish she'd done a section at the beginning talking about that more, but maybe that is room for my own book. That said, I wish she spent time demonstrating and explaining how to do the petals and the filler flowers. Most of the book has been decent about showing techniques, especially the brush calligraphy, but this part is too lean on how to actually do it. Her cover art, the project with her cover art, is on page 128. I'm glad all of the art in the book is also a project in the book. Not all art how-to books seem to do this, and Jenna Rainey's book was very guilty of that. It was something I really did not like about Jenna Rainey's book. Is like all the art that I really liked, and I was like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. She never talks about it in the book. She has templates in the back of the book on page 132. So they're good size. I'm sorry they're not showing up. They're good size black and white line arts. They make some of the projects more accessible, but I am still looking for a good book on techniques for those loose watercolor florals. So if you guys have any suggestions about books that really talk about the loose florals, let me know. I kind of have a running theory that all of these mid-20 teens artists who came up in the mid-20 teens were probably heavily influenced by Rifle Paper & Co.'s designs. I'm going to explore that more because I think that is a line of thought to kind of investigate, except that's all very like gouache look. So on page 138, I like how she included 52 weeks of cute watercolor challenges. Prompt lists are very popular, and some artists offer monthly lists as a Patreon incentive. I am aware of that. People have asked me to do that. The only reason I don't is because I feel like there's also the obligation that you, the artist, have to participate in the prompt list. And I have Sjogren syndrome, and my hands are hurting all the time now. I'm not drawing as much or as quickly as I would like to. So I have to be very picky right now until my health improves about the projects that I can take on and how much I can commit to. So if my hand health improves, I would love to do that. I think it's a cute idea. I really like it. I used to love doing monthly challenges. I still do Lilliputian Living all October long. My hands are just not holding up the way I would like them to. So I don't want to commit to something like that until I'm better health-wise. But I like that her book does include that. So the back of the book, we're just going to circle back to my complaint. She studied graphic design in 2000, but she's a self-taught watercolor artist. And I understand that these books are written. They're on the market. They are out there. Sorry, the mosquitoes are eating me up. I'm not going to be able to change what is already in print. I really want to inspire these artists to drop that terminology and adopt School of Internet, to adopt self-directed, self-taught, self-motivated, so that it's more inclusive. And I think it'll actually be more inspirational and aspirational to their audience and to their students. So, in general, I really like Jeannie Dickson's Hello Watercolor. I thought it had a lot of really great points to it. It had a lot to like. I liked all the photos. I loved all the tips. I feel like she really shared a lot of the tips, tricks of the trade that artists might not know, especially if they are learning watercolor on their own and they don't have friends that they can kind of learn with or bounce ideas off of, or they're not able to take classes. I feel like she was able to bring a lot of the class experience to this book, which I love it. She has an index in the back, so if you're looking for specific things, it makes it easier to find. I love that as well. It is bright, pretty, colorful. I wish it was spiral bound because I happen to prefer the spiral bound how-to books, but in general, I thought this book was fantastic. There are a few things I didn't super love, but compared to everyday watercolor. I think Hello Watercolor is a refreshing breath of fresh air that is worth your time and money. And there's several techniques, projects, and drills that I'm going to be revisiting. So let's go see how the Maimeri Blue collaboration kind of holds up to the expectations and the vibe that Hello Watercolor has set. Now for the part that I'm starting to think of as the fun part for the Easily Influenced series. The looking at people's social media pages, taking some notes, and just kind of getting some inspiration for how they handle things. So we are currently taking a look at Jeannie Dickson. I'm using DuckDuckGo for this, which I find brings up some interesting results sometimes, but it can also be helpful in seeing just how prevalent this person actually is. So we have a Facebook page, we have some YouTube, well, these are all listed on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Princeton Brush Company featured artist article. That's kind of exciting. We have, here's the YouTube channel, actually, maybe. Yeah, I guess so. Hard to tell, actually. For some reason, I was thinking that there would be an Instagram, and I'm not actually seeing an Instagram yet. But maybe as we kind of just dig around and look, we'll see an Instagram. So let's start with Facebook. Oh, very pretty. It's got Hello Watercolor right here up at the top, so you know about her book. And you also have it here as the badge. Unfortunately, it's not following anybody. We have some very pretty featured posts. Always looking for inspiration, always trying to take notes, and the layout for this is so much nicer than what I did for mine. Now, she does have an Etsy, and we're definitely going to take a look at her Etsy in a moment, just because I've been kind of thinking about, rather than just having my own personal site with my own personal shop, offering some of my art prints on Etsy for just people who are more interested in art prints than they necessarily are familiar with my work. But oh, I love how bright and vibrant her watercolors are, and it does seem like she's hyping up her collab with Maimeri Blue, which is, I mean, that makes sense, you know. We also have some beautiful little demos going on here. So anything that she can do to hype up this collaboration would be a good idea. And it does seem like she's doing quite a bit. Oh, look at those colors. See, really selling it. Which is, you know, what she should be doing. And then here's her link to her Amazon page. We can actually see that she has really faint outlines for a lot of her work, which I kind of feel like that wasn't super apparent when I was reading her book. So this is, you know, good information to have. It's good to see, and some beautiful hand lettering as well. So a lot of reels and short videos, as well as these static images with her clean brush. Honestly, this is probably not even the brush that she used for this in the shot, because I mean, this is looking kind of chewed up, and I would imagine she didn't use a chewed up brush for this. But see, I should be doing this. I should be smart like this, like the whole like, oh, you caught me painting photo. Like that's such a good idea, and it pulls people in, and I should be taking pages from their books. Ooh, 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 ooh. I like this. I need to come back to this so I can watch it later on. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing like any easy way to just kind of, I can copy the link, and that way I can take a look at it later. But yeah, she's doing a lot to promote her collaboration with Maimeri Blue. I think that is a good idea. She's also talking about her book, which is something I should be doing more, and just doing kind of like Facebook posts and stuff, showing it off for people who might not be familiar. And she's got a giveaway, or had a giveaway. This is a while back, July 23rd. She had a giveaway for this. So it does seem like she's making content to promote this collaboration. And I feel like I didn't see this. Maybe I missed it when we were taking a look at Jenna Rainey. So I don't know, but I like what I see. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that is moving and engaging and just pretty to look at. And I mean, is it a tutorial? If you know a little bit of watercolor, yeah, you could actually learn from these techniques. I mean, that's how I feel when I share time-lapse videos. It's like, if you see something that you want to try and you find inspiring, you can probably tell just from watching the time-lapse what's going on. I don't think every educational video has to have everything explained full out. There's definitely a lot of religious elements with several of the influential artists / art influencers that I've looked at. I'm not going to comment on that one way or another, but it is since we are also looking at common trends among art influencers, it is something I see a lot. But I love all of the tutorials. I think they're just very cute, very inspiring, very like aspirational, like let's get going with painting. And that's, you know, as somebody who also teaches and wants to make art and watercolor as accessible to as many people as possible, you know, it's a vibe that I can definitely appreciate and commiserate with. We will take a step backwards. So we looked at her Facebook. I think this is her YouTube. It might also be like Princeton hosting one of her tutorials, something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and mute the sound. I do not know, other than I have a billion tabs going on. See, this is actually hosted by Cass Art, which I believe is an art supply store. Now, in the description, they call her Instagram star, and it's a little weird to me that DuckDuckGo actually wasn't pulling up her Instagram, because I'm pretty sure she has an Instagram. So just definitely gives you a different view of the internet. I'm not promoting them. We don't have a partnership. I honestly just got really tired of looking up information about art supplies and not being able to find anything because Google was so busy trying to push other people's reviews or my own reviews back at me, or the listing where you can buy it rather than like the product's website or actual product information. So this is hosted by Princeton. It's a little article, so this would be her Instagram handle. It's a little weird that it's actually not clickable. Here we go. We have the Etsy, the Facebook, and the Instagram. Let's head on over to her Instagram. I do not know why that was not a clickable link on Facebook. It's a little weird. So one thing I have definitely noticed about all of the artists that I have taken a look at so far, we're not done yet, is they all have these really beautiful curated grids. Like this one in particular, like this woman is a master of we got the brush shot, we've got 2 shots of the illustration. We got the brush shot, we got 2 shots of the illustration. We got the brush, like it is so managed, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but it is not an attainable thing for me. And I'm sure it's like, well, Becca, that would be very easy to do. Y'all, that requires math, and I am not all about that math. But her Instagram is very beautiful. It is aspirational. It is very aesthetic. We've got the cute little Easter ducks and lambs. We've got a shot of her book. We've got some beautiful color mixes with her new palette. We have actually, okay, there are some reels mixed in here. It's just kind of, okay. Oh, she's so clever. Okay, reel, carousel, stat, man, like really smart about, so Instagram really wants you to use all of the things all of the time, post multiple times a day. And if you're making your money as an influencer, whether it's an art influencer or a model or what have you, you have time to do that. You can prioritize that. But I think for most of us, that is aspirational, but not really doable. So while I think it is very beautiful and very clever and probably a reason she gets, part of the reason, obviously her art is gorgeous, but part of the reason why she gets so many hits on her Instagram is because Instagram is promoting it to other people because she's doing the Instagram game the way they want the Instagram game done. It is not feasible for most people. That's an amount of time that most of us don't have. Here's the shot of it at Walmart. Oh, and there is Christy Rice's book as well. We talked about that in the series. And just a really beautiful Instagram with lots of beautiful projects. It's making me a little bit sad because mine is not nearly this beautiful. But, you know, that is something that can be worked on, time permitting. I'm in the middle of this black and white art challenge, so mine is not nearly as beautiful and colorful as I would like. So we're going to go back to the Princeton and we're going to check out her Etsy. Maybe I'll get some inspiration. A beautiful Etsy. To be real though, I don't understand why the heading on her Facebook was actually kind of boring compared to this. This is a really pretty image. We have the silver black velvet brushes. And then we have lots of printables. Very cool. Mostly for like lettering, it looks like. In fact, entirely for lettering. So if you guys are watching and you are interested in learning more about brush lettering, calligraphy, and you want to practice, she has you covered over here on her Etsy. And I think, other than maybe her YouTube channel, which is, looks like right here. And oh, she has a feature with Strathmore artists as well. What's it take to get some comic artists up on that list? And we've got 2 playlists. We've got watercolor painting and watercolor lettering. So actually not a lot to look at on here. It feels a little bit empty, but it's easily organized. You can choose your path. And then we'll just take a look at the Strathmore article. Pretty similar actually to the Princeton article. Well, it's nice that they're actually giving like a shout out to who did the art on the cards. How often have I complained about companies when they don't do that? And it actually credits her. Very nice, Strathmore. And then we have, what is this palette here? Let me know. I'm curious about that. It looks like a Dale Rowney palette, but not one that I have seen too much of. But all these shots are very aesthetic. Honestly, as an artist, does it make me want to buy it? No, because there's like nothing on the postcards and the brushes don't even look like they've been used. But, you know, I am sure it probably does inspire other people. And then they have an entire list of other artists that I could check out. I love when art supply companies feature artists. I think that is very cool. And it just makes it easier for me to find other artists that I look up to and think have awesome work. So I don't actually want to close that tab out because I want to come back to that and check that out a little bit more. So I am just going to look her up one more time and we'll see if there's anything good that we might have missed. no, looks like that's basically the essentials. So very simple, fairly straightforward. She's not on like a bajillion sites on like some comic artist, me, that I happen to know. Everything is pretty easily organized, fairly easy to find for the most part, and everything is really bright and colorful. I kind of wish that she had some watercolor printables similar to the lettering printables that she has, because those would be really cool and would probably help a lot of people. But obviously nobody is required to do anything. Actually, as I say that, does she have a website? I'm sure she must have a website, right? It can't just be her Facebook, because you would think she might have like art prints and things like that, like some of the other influential artists that we've taken a look at. So I'm going to see if I can find her website where she might be selling that, and we'll see what we can find. So I tried typing it in a few different ways. I was not able to pull up a personal website where she might be selling art prints, and y'all saw it doesn't seem like she's selling them on Etsy. So if I'm wrong, if she does have a place where she's selling art prints or originals, things like that, let me know. I did try to dig, and I do think that kind of information is the sort of thing that should be pretty immediately apparent if somebody has something like that. So if you guys know, I can try Jeannie Dickson watercolor, and maybe we'll see. We do actually get a little bit slightly different results, but yeah, I'm not really seeing anything like a personal website like that. So I don't know, would have been cool, but obviously people can choose to sell or what not to sell. And that is not, you know, any kind of a negative statement about them. I was just curious because her art is beautiful. It's very colorful. And I'm sure lots of people would like to own her art on more things, including art prints. So that means it is time for us to check out her collaboration with Maimeri Blue. And after seeing all of the beautiful images and demonstrations on her Facebook with these paints, I'm really excited to check them out. Now it is finally time to take a look at Jeannie Dickson's collaboration with Maimeri Blue. And these were ordered off of Amazon, and they shipped through MC Art Supplies. And last I checked, but before we say goodbye, I will double check, Amazon isn't covering this collaboration. And as we saw, not Amazon, almost got myself there. This thing is taped up very, very well. So I don't think Blick is carrying Jeannie Dickson's collaboration with Maimeri Blue, but I am going to double check. This box is also like dangerously taped up because there's like a cardboard lip here where my pin slipped, my X-Acto blade slipped, and I got myself. So it is kind of overly packaged to the point where it's very easy for somebody cutting into this to get injured. And that's not Jeannie Dickson's fault. That's on MC Art. See if I can actually get it open now. I cannot. Wow, this is so, for some watercolor tubes, this is ridiculously taped up. Inside is some paper, our Jeannie Dickson tubes, a sticker for MC Art Supplies, and an invoice that was stamped and signed, and it came from Waco, Texas, and it does not have the price, which when it comes to invoices, that is what I want. I want to know the price. As we saw earlier, Jeannie actually does a lot with her palette and was showcasing her palette, but I don't remember seeing it on Blick. In fact, I am pretty sure they don't carry this collaboration, but I wanted to try searching for a different way just in case I had missed something. Because, you know, that can and often does happen. Maybe they listed it in the interim. So we have the dot card set, we have the artist set of 5. I believe that is what I looked at in the first of this series. They have the Jenna Rainey set of 6, and their prices are actually a little bit better than Amazon. So I am not seeing the Jenna Rainey set, which is a little bit weird because you would think with it being a Maimeri blue product that they'd have her here. And then here on Amazon, here is Hello Watercolor, but I am not actually seeing her palette, which is a little bit weird. You would think we would, so let us try Maimeri. I misspelled it, but it should pull it up anyway, and here it is. So I paid $38 for it. It actually looks like the Jenna Rainey set is on sale by about $10, probably to compete a little bit better with Blick. And this is a 6 single pigment color set. Yep, looks like the Jenna Rainey set is like $10 cheaper than what I paid. And then they also have the 5-piece single pigment introductory set here as well. As we talked about in the other 2 installments of our Easily Influenced series, in our other 2 installments of the Maimeri Blue series, I apologize, it is cheaper to buy Maimeri Blue in these sets, often quite a bit cheaper. So I'll make sure to link these in the description for you guys so you guys can get these deals. Than it is to buy them open stock as single tubes, because the single tubes usually start at around $13. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but it did seem like Jeannie did a lot of work to promote this palette and to create pieces that utilize this palette and have them all over her Facebook, which I think is such a wonderful and inspiring idea. So I do think it's kind of a shame that Blick isn't carrying this set, because she's going to a lot of effort to promote it and to spread the word. So it has some adorable floral cover art. She has signed it. I mean, not literally signed it, but you know what I mean. And then on the back, it says Jeannie Dickson. Jeannie is a watercolor artist and digital content creator, author of Hello Watercolor, and founder of the popular Instagram account at Jeannie Dickson Designs, where she is mostly known for her modern watercolor techniques and unique lettering style. You can find more of her work and tutorials on her Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel. And then we have her links. The colors in this set are Yellow Vanadum, Orange Lake, Yellow Ochre, Primary Red Magenta, Turquoise Green, and Quinacridone Violet Reddish. And this is the color gamut down here. And one of the things I'm kind of noticing with the Maimeri Blue collabs is they seem very focused on Instagram and Instagram accounts that are extremely popular, that have a lot of engagement, that have a lot of followers. So if theoretically we over here were interested in working with Maimeri Blue, that would just not happen, because even though I post to Instagram all the time, it is it's my deadest social media account in terms of engagement. But, you know, since I am someone who's curious about how the sausage is made and how the influence is peddled, it is interesting to see what sites they're looking at and what metrics they're looking for, because a lot of these companies are not always super clear about what they're looking for when they're partnering with artists. So sometimes it's kind of fun to suss that out. So I assume this is a slip cover like Jenna Rainey, and it does appear to be so. And then inside is a plain cardboard box, which leaves them room for more collaborations. And just what I am seeing from the color gamut here, I really like these colors. The only one I think is kind of in this particular palette would be the Yellow Ochre. I think also this is the only duplicate color I have. And that is because if I were to put together a mixing set to recommend to people, Yellow Ochre would be one of those colors. So if I'm buying tubes open stock and the set doesn't have a Yellow Ochre, I'm always going to pick up a Yellow Ochre. It's a color I use all the time when painting people. So that's the only reason I actually have this duplicate. So theoretically, if you wanted to buy the Jenna Rainey, the introductory set, and this set, you wouldn't, well, no, there's a green gold that's a duplicate, but I think otherwise there are no other duplicates. So as with our other 2 reviews, we're just going to take a quick look. The tubes are 12 milliliter tubes. They have the color number. They have the light fast, they have the transparency, they have the grade, which is similar to the series, which is, you know, how much this tube would typically cost if you were buying it open stock, and that is a reflection of the pigments that are inside. This is yellow vanadum. The pigment info for this is PY184, and it does look like it is staining. There is a small ST plus over there. And I believe these are all single pigment, not segment, single pigment watercolors. So those of you who have been watching, those of you who hang out here on the channel know this is the third installment in a 3-part series. We have already taken a look at the introductory set. We have already taken a look at the Jeannie collaboration with Maimeri Blue. Now we're taking a look at the Jeannie Dickson collaboration. And I left, honestly, not enough space down at the bottom of the page, but we are going to make it work. And this is kind of the culmination of all 3 reviews, because I am going to add these new colors to my existing Maimeri Blue palette. And this is just an inexpensive Magello palette. So I'm going to kind of move some of the colors around. The colors you see marked with white are the ones that were in the Jeannie palette. We are going to swatch both straight from the tubes as well as dried for a week and a half pans. We might do a little bit of color mixing, and we're going to finally do our wet into wet test, where we throw a bunch of color at the page and just see what happens. Now, this is already kind of a longer video because we also did a book review, and we took a look at Jeannie Dickson's online presence so that we could learn a little bit more about becoming art influencers or influential artists ourselves, and whether or not we have what it takes. So what I might do is, for the field test, that is probably going to be a separate video, just so that I can keep this within a manageable time frame. So if you are interested in seeing how Maimeri Blue paints handle in general, if you are interested in seeing me paint a watercolor illustration like this one or this one with these paints, then make sure you subscribe and click the bell notification to let you know when that's going to happen. One of the first things I'm going to do before I start filling half pans and labeling things, which is an important thing to do, but I am going to just create my lines for my opacity tests that we are going to use later. So what I'm going to do is we're going to swatch some straight from the half pan and then side by side. We're going to let them dry and come back a week later and re-swatch them. And what we're looking for is reactivatability. We're looking at, with our initial swatches, granulation and how they wash out, and liftability as well. So this actually gives a lot of information about how someone like me, a watercolor comic artist, might be able to utilize these watercolors, and whether or not these professional grade watercolors are helpful to somebody like me who makes the kind of art that I make, because I typically work from half pans like these. Before I can start pouring the paints, it's time to reorganize the palette just a little bit. So I'm going to remove the washi tape markers that I used to denote which colors are from the Jeannie set. And I'm just going to start kind of zhuzhing things around and figuring out where I want to add my new colors so that it makes sense chromatically as a whole palette, and it'll make it easier for me to do the field test when we're ready to do the field test. And we're not going to be including yellow ochre because we already have yellow ochre in the set, but I will be swatching this when we swatch, because part of this review is not just to look at Maimeri Blue as a watercolor brand and whether or not they produce quality watercolors, but to also look at the colors chosen for these sets to feel like, if they feel like a cohesive set and if they feel like something that the artist herself would be using. To be absolutely honest with you guys, while labeling the bottom of the half pans was a good idea, I should have been writing down the order that everything's in as I went along, because it's gotten changed several times. So for me to be able to figure out exactly what colors are in this set, I can either compare the swatches, or I'm going to have to pull everything out and write down all the names. I should have been smarter about it, but you know what? This took place over the course of 3 reviews. It's natural that things might get confused. While filling the half pans, I did notice some separation. You can massage the tubes a little bit to kind of remix your gum arabic and your pigments. I find that tends to be a little bit more successful once the tube has been used a little bit and there's some space in it. The colors in this collaboration are yellow vanadum, 3 stars of light fastness. It is semi-opaque. It is grade 4. It uses PY184 and it is staining. Orange Lake, 3 stars of light fastness. It is transparent. It is grade 2. It uses PO43 and it is staining. Yellow ochre, 3 stars of light fastness. It is opaque. It is grade 1. It uses PY42. It is not staining. Primary red magenta, 3 stars of light fastness. It is transparent. It is grade 1. It uses PV19 and it is staining. Turquoise green, 3 stars of light fastness. It is transparent. It is grade 2. It uses PB16 and it is staining. And quinacridone violet reddish, which is 3 stars of light fastness, transparent, grade 1. It uses PV55 and it is staining as well. So I noticed that these were a little bit more liquidy, more prone to getting all over the place as I was filling the half pans. And you guys saw early on that little bit of that kind of yellow gum arabic. Now, typically when I'm looking at watercolors, I like watercolors that either use a really light gum arabic or have a honey base or use something like Aquazol that's going to be a little bit clearer. And the reason for that is because gum arabic can get really yellow, and that can pollute blues, turquoise blues, those kind of colors, right? Like it's fine up until about here, but then from here to over here, that additional yellow can really change how the color is perceived and can make it look duller and more muddy. An anecdotal example is I used to dislike the color ultramarine blue. I know it's like such a palette staple, but it's because honestly, I just didn't really like Winsor & Newton's ultramarine blue. Their gum arabic is really kind of yellow. And once I tried Core's ultramarine blue and Sennelier's ultramarine blue, which are much cleaner ultramarine blues that don't have as much yellow to them, I fell in love with the colors. So that's one of the reasons I kind of can harp about the use of a darker colored gum arabic rather than something that is a little bit less yellow, because it really can change how the colors handle and how the colors look. Speaking of how the colors look, it is time to find out how these new colors look. It is time to swatch them. With the initial straight from tube swatches, everything swatched pretty saturated. I did have some color control in that it was very easy to pick up more paint than I wanted, so I may not be putting down quite as much paint as I might if I had reactivated these from dried pans. So the colors in the Jeannie Dickson collaboration are all very bright, really nice color delivery. I have to admit, I am kind of surprised that between her and Jenna Rainey, neither of them have an opera or like a really good hot pink, but I am much happier with Jeannie Dickson's color selection than I was with Jenna Rainey's. This to me feels more in keeping with what I tend to see from her art. And I might be biased because she did do a lot of work creating tutorials, creating little reels and snippets and creating art with this specific palette and then sharing it. So when you look at her social media, you do see these colors a lot, and it does a good job of really tying them together. The only color that I feel is kind of like, why is it in the set, is the yellow ochre. And not that yellow ochre is a bad color or that I don't use yellow ochre. It just doesn't quite go with this set. That said, and we're going to do color mixing after these have dried, I know for a fact that this turquoise blue and this yellow are going to mix together for a really nice green. So I guess the only question I have is like, why the inclusion of an orange? Because you could mix a pretty good orange with this red and this yellow, and that would free up space for, I don't know, hot pink, perhaps. Actually, I'll tell you guys, yellow and hot pink mix up some really gorgeous oranges. So that would be the only thing I might sub out. I also kind of feel like this what is this actually? This is Primary Red Magenta. This could have been subbed out for a hot pink. I know, I'm obsessed with the idea of a hot pink, okay? Because between her and Jenna Rainey, these colors are also kind of similar. And I'm just going to assume that if you're buying Jenna Rainey's palette, you're also probably going to consider buying Jeannie Dickson's palette. And it would just help if Maimeri blue, because like some of the color choices are just kind of weird, right? Like it feels like maybe they were pushed in a direction to pick certain colors so that after someone has bought all these sets, they'll have a cohesive collection of paints. Except these two don't feel like they really complement each other. So I don't necessarily understand the thought process on Maimeri's part for what colors the artists were kind of, I don't know if the artist just picked the colors they wanted included or if Maimeri kind of directed them. So here is the box art, and maybe this olive green was mixed using this turquoise and this. That would actually make sense to me. But we're going to find out after we have allowed these to dry and set up for a week. So in a week, no time for you guys, basically, I'm going to re-swatch them. I'm going to do a little color mixing in the space that I have left. And we'll finally get to do our wet into wet test. And maybe I will finally have, I wouldn't say a full verdict. I think a feel test is in order for me to really know how I feel about these paints. But I will at least be on the right track and be able to give you guys some pros and some cons. Now, if you happen to like watercolors and watercolor art, and if you happen to be a fan of what I do here in the channel or my art, you guys should know that I do have some really pretty art prints available in the Natto shop, and they will be signed and stamped with one of my custom eraser stamps. Those turned out so cute, but I have a bunch of really pretty watercolor designs. They were printed by Cat Print. This is the happiest I have ever been with having my art printed. They look even better than the originals, so I really love them. And they are on Cat Print's felt paper, so they are just really beautiful. They are one of my best sellers at in-person shows, and you can find them at nattosoup.com/shop. It's been 1 week, so these are fairly dry. Some of them you can still push in a little bit. That's fine. We're still gonna roll with it. So it is time to do our second swatch for the Jeannie Dickson Maimeri Blue collaboration. And in this part of the review, we're also going to do our color mixing, our lift test, our wet into wet test for all three sets. I'm gonna make a palette map, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of Maimeri Blue watercolors. I noticed in the past that Maimeri Blue watercolors tend to turn kind of soupy if you pre-activate them. So we're just going to go right in with our silver black velvet watercolor brushes rather than giving them a spritz. I didn't pre-activate the half pans. They reactivated just fine, and they might be a little bit easier to handle the color and color saturation for me in this format. Now we're going to try doing a little bit of color mixing with Jeannie Dickson's colors. I found it was easy to mix some good florals with this set, particularly purples, corals, and really bright greens. It's also easy to mix some decent browns for stems. This color selection makes more sense to me than the Jenna Rainey collaboration did. I was a little bit surprised, but not entirely surprised, by some of the really nice color mixes we're able to get with the Jeannie Dickson. And I didn't even try using the yellow ochre. I'd forgotten about the yellow ochre, but I was really impressed with some of the mixes we're able to get, particularly with some of the greens. as well as some of the really nice purples. I feel like in terms of being able to mix bright floral colors, including browns for stems, the Jeannie Dickson collaboration makes a little bit more sense to me than the Jenna Rainey collaboration. So next, we need to do the lift test. We're going to do the lift test on the older swatches. These have had more than a week to dry. And if I'm not seeing any kind of results, then we'll move on to the newer swatches that have just finished drying. It looks like there's a nice mix of both staining as well as more lifting colors in this set. Although, from what I'm kind of noticing, other than our initial swatches, they're all pretty lit. Like there's like a medium ground. They're not fully lifting, but they're also not fully staining. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and try these newer ones as well. So finally, we get to do the wet into wet test, and I am going to be testing out all 3 parts of this series. We're going to be testing out the introductory set as well as the individual open stock half pans I purchased. We're going to be testing the Jenna Rainey and the Jeannie Dickson all in one go, because really these are all made by Maimeri Blue. So it's what differs from set to set is just the curation, the color choices, how well they go together, or how well they demonstrate Maimeri Blue's properties as a company. So for the wet into wet test, that really doesn't matter. We can mix them all together and see what kind of mud we can come up with. Save the wet into wet test until we had all 3 sets together because it gives us more colors to choose from. These are not as saturated as I would have liked. They really disperse into the water. As you guys can see, they move a lot. While they turn soupy with pre-activation, you don't get saturation from these unless you pre-activate. It's often challenging for me to get enough color. The colors disperse and intermix nicely and turn into these really pretty misty colors, and I'm not noticing any obvious rings or halos while it is still wet. As it dried, I did notice maybe some haloing is starting to appear with the ultramarine blue, but that might also just be it drying lighter. It's kind of hard to tell. Still, no weird harsh outlines. Now we can finally do our palette map. I've already pre-cut a sheet of cotton rag watercolor paper to fit in the space that we have, and this is just pretty simple and straightforward. And we do this because sometimes the mass tone of a color makes it hard to tell what the color actually is, particularly with some of these purples and with some of these blue greens. So for the palette map, I am just going to do mass tones of the colors, and we're just going to kind of alternate between the top row and the bottom row to make sure that we have room for everything. And it's kind of interesting to see how this palette came together, because I started with the introductory set, picked up a few open stock tubes, then I bought the Jenna Rainey collab, then I found out about the Jeannie Dickson collab. So now I have kind of an interesting mix of colors. I feel like I still need to pick up a sepia and maybe a sap green or a hooker's green to be able to do the field test. What are the pros and cons of the Jeannie Dickson collaboration with Maimeri Blue? Well, let's start with the pros. So these are a better value in this set than buying these colors open stock. So if you like these colors, even if you're not familiar with this artist, this is going to be a better deal than buying the individual tubes, which I've seen them start at 11 or start at 13, depending on where you're getting them from. Whereas this whole set of 6 is around 38, maybe less, maybe higher. It's been kind of fluctuating over on Amazon. So that's almost 2 tubes for the price of 1. So that's much better than open stock. So even if you're not into Jeannie Dickson's art, you don't even know who she is, this is a good value. I also found that these colors make for cleaner, brighter floral mixes, at least for what I'm looking for, than the Jenna Rainey palette. So if I had to tell you, you could, or rather, if you're deciding you're only going to get one, I would recommend the Jeannie Dickson palette over the Jenna Rainey palette. It just makes more sense as a cohesive watercolor palette, and Jeannie Dickson has more content online promoting and demonstrating this palette, more tutorials, more inspiration. It seems like she was really excited about the collaboration. The downside is, while Dick Blick does carry the Jenna Rainey collab and some of the other Maimeri blue sets, they don't carry the Jeannie Dickson collaboration. So if you want to get this set, you're going to need to get it, at least as far as I know, on Amazon. I haven't, to be fair, checked everyone else because I felt like the price on Amazon was pretty comparable for what you should pay. But if you have a favorite art supply supplier who sells this set, let me know down in the comments below, link them, and feel free to get them from there. You don't have to get them from Amazon. So what about the pros and cons of Maimeri Blue in general? Let's talk more generally about the brand. I find these paints to be well priced if you buy the sets, particularly if you keep an eye out for deals. I actually saw the Jenna Rainey set going for $27 rather than $38 the other day. Don't know why it was so low. That was over on Amazon. Don't know if that's still going on. I actually told people over in my community tab about it because that was like $10 cheaper than an already pretty good deal. Even though I'm not like the biggest fan of the colors in this particular set, 27 bucks. You can't beat that. So what about the cons? Maimeri Blue is kind of pricey if you're hoping to buy them one tube at a time. As I just mentioned, and I'll scroll here on Blick and scroll here on Amazon and probably confuse myself and get those reversed. They are either around $11 open stock or $13 open stock for individual tubes. And that's the cheapest tubes. It goes up from there. So they are kind of pricey. They are also not as saturated as I'd hoped for. I find that Winsor Newton delivers a lot of color. I find that Core delivers a lot of color. I feel like Da Vinci delivers a lot of color. And something that I don't like about Maimeri Blue that I feel is similar with Schmincke is it just takes a while for me to get the color that I'm looking for, and I am an impatient person who likes to work from tubes. Another problem is that these are in a weird middle zone, kind of like M. Graham's, where you need to pre-activate them to get that saturated color, but if you pre-activate them, they turn soupy very fast, they glob up on your brush, and you end up wasting a lot of paint. So not super sure how I would recommend handling these. I'm going to do the Maimeri Blue field test in an upcoming video, so my opinions on these points may change with the field test. This is my soft verdict on the Maimeri Blue. So far, I don't think that these are really for me or for what I'm looking for. That said, it's really hard to say without putting these to the field test, so please keep an eye out for that. It's going to be in a separate video, so these reviews aren't 3 hours long each. But just going by what I saw, doing the swatches, doing the color mixing, doing the lift test, and doing the wet into wet, I generally want more color payoff, and I find these watercolors are very expensive for that kind of color payoff. You're using a lot of paint to get the kind of color that you would get with less paint from a different brand. So as a watercolor comic artist and illustrator who paints a lot of little illustrations on a page, it's just kind of price prohibitive for me, and it's not something that I personally recommend. But if you like Maimeri Blue watercolors, that's awesome. Let me know down in the comments. Show off some of your work. Let's see what you got going on. I'm always interested in seeing what other artists are doing and seeing what other artists like to work with. And everybody is entitled to their own opinion because we are all different people and we all work very differently. And it's just super exciting to see somebody who can take an art supply that I don't care for and really make it sing for them. That is why there's so many different products on the market. That's why I really love seeing new and interesting and different products. Not that Maimeri Blue really falls into that category, but that's why I like seeing those new and interesting products, as it may unlock the door to creativity for someone who might be struggling to find their medium. So you guys are totally welcome and even encouraged to share your opinions, agreeing, dissenting.
If you think I'm totally crazy, that's all fine, but let's be respectful and kind to one another. This channel is a safe space for all artists to share and talk about their work and their process. So, you know, you can disagree with every single thing I say. You can think I'm totally off base, but, you know, just be cool about it.
So it was so nice to finally find a how-to watercolor book that I really like and that I think I can recommend to my students and that I think they will benefit from. Look, I was starting to think I was just bitter. So it was really refreshing to find a beginner / maybe intermediate watercolor book that I think is great. There's a lot of good tips for intermediate artists, but there's a lot of good fundamentals for beginner artists. And I really don't have too many complaints other than I wish she would have spent more time on the florals. There is a ton of neat projects. She walks you through them and she has templates in the back. So even if you are not much of a drafts person, you can still paint along with confidence. And I love to see that here. That's why I provide the line arts with my start to finish tutorials. I love to see it. So I do recommend Hello Watercolor. Whether you have gone to school for watercolor and illustration or whether you're learning at your own pace from home, I think you'll enjoy this book. My opinion of her collaboration with Maimeri Blue is I like the colors in the set for the most part. I find them to be decent mixing colors and they are pretty colors. My opinion on Maimeri Blue is not quite so generous. I think it's kind of overpriced. It's not as pigmented as I would have liked. And it's just not going to, it's not entering my daily driver palette. There was nothing about Maimeri Blue that made me be like, oh, I really want to use these with my watercolor comics or with my illustrations. Oh, I can see myself using these. So it's not so much for me. I do have a field test video coming up. It's going to be a separate thing because we don't want these to take 4 hours. I can't edit 4 hours. I'm impressed that you guys have hung out with me as long as you have today. Hopefully it's been fun for you. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that field test, you don't miss that final verdict, because I can and do change my opinion as time progresses, as my skills change, as my niche change. Sometimes I feel very differently about a product than I did 10 years ago. So if you want to make sure you catch the field test for all 3 of the sets plus some open stock colors, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification. So here's a little spoiler. The sun is, not spoiler, whatever, it's about me. The sun is directly in my eyes right now. My AC units are going and everybody's brakes are super duper screechy, and all of those are overstimulating the ADHD and my brain wants to drop words. So the shot is beautiful. Like, it is good lighting, beautiful greenery, like the sky is, I think it's blue, yeah, blue in the background. It's partly cloudy today, so it's like a beautiful shot. I just can't keep a thought in my head. So if you guys want to make sure you don't miss any of this, make sure you join me here on YouTube. Click the subscribe button. It's totally free. And if you would like to support my work financially, like the buying of the books and the watercolors that I have been reviewing in the Easily Influenced series, you can join me on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup. I have had so much fun reading art books and checking out watercolors. I've just really been enjoying it. I hope you guys have been enjoying the journey. If you like what I have to say and you want more of it, I have buku watercolor and drawing and comic tutorials here for you guys. So check that description because I'll link some of them for you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me again today. I hope to see you guys again soon. This probably ran as a premiere. I had so much fun in the premiere that I did for the Christy Rice video. Y'all were just so awesome that I've decided that I want to do all of the Easily Influenced collab videos where it's like a paint and a book. I want to do all of them as premieres. So thank you guys so much for hanging out and chatting with me this evening. I really enjoyed it. Y'all are just so awesome. I like you guys so much. Thank you guys for just being a part of my life in the way, the limited capacity that we interact with each other, I still really appreciate it. Not trying to foster parasocial relationships here, but am trying to say that I appreciate you guys and thank you. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again soon with another art supply review or tutorial, or maybe even being a little bit easily influenced.